Hello, welcome back to part 2 of our comment, review, and response for Strange New World Season 1. Part double, the one that comes after 2 and before 3. Without further ado, let's check out what Michael Strathmore is saying about Strange New World Season 1, Episode 6. As usual, hello, the following are my real-time reactions as I watch Star Trek. Lift us where suffering cannot reach. All in all, not a great episode. Agreed. Really unoriginal, wholly predictable, and a large plot hole or two. Unfortunately, Pike continues to be depicted not only as prejudiced against other alien species, but also as one of the least deft captains, in the history of the franchise. I know, I said that this is a very weak episode for Pike. It portrays him in not a great light. My hope is that this post will spark substantive discussion among Star Trek fans here as well as on other channels. Read if you like. That's where the credits roll, okay. Extra points if you watch the episode with this list and your pause button at the ready. Thanks in advance for your time. Okay. Spoilers. Alright, let's get into it. Pike references the Magellan system, and I admit that it isn't jogging in memory. Either I have too many cobwebs clouding up my brain, or this isn't a well-known system. Well, listen, this space is big, okay? 10 years ago, Pike was nearly killed here on a rescue mission. Maybe this is from beta canon from a novel. Ghosts of Illyria was kind of from a novel, in not so many words. Trying to do a quick math in my head to determine if Pike was the first officer of the Enterprise 10 years ago. Don't let it rattle around your brain too much. It's not worth it. A distress shuttle from a non-Federation shuttle. Okay, so it's like a distressed shuttle from a non-Federation shuttle under attack. So much for a less eventful cartography mission. Isn't that always the way? Ensign Shankar at Communications. Maybe other ensign is still being punished for Enterprise bingo. I don't know about that whole Enterprise bingo thing. Look, I understand that her is on rotation with other departments, but in a real-world scenario, when the Enterprise is being fired upon, it is negligent of the security chief not to relieve her of her duties and assume her post. Agreed. Exactly. Sigh, with the Uhura still manning this post, she misses and causes more damage to the ship than intended. She also blames the fact that the target changed course right onto our weapons, despite the fact that the visuals show the craft not remotely doing that whatsoever. Uhura is a bad shot as well as a bad liar. Well, sometimes the writing staff and maybe the CGI staff are not communicating well, and the CGI was done and it was going to cost $1 million to go back and fix it. But you're not wrong, though. I know. So the shuttle that was being fired upon is asking for immediate evacuation. That's all well and good. But what about the other craft that's falling towards the planet after Uhura blew them to smithereens? Is anybody remotely concerned that the Enterprise is just letting them potentially follow their doom? With so little information as to why this conflict has taken place, might it not behoove the Enterprise to resolve this as peacefully as possible? One would think. I wonder which lesson it is on Singh's list that teaches cadets the importance of accompanying captains and first officers to the transporter room when receiving unknown alien species onto the ship. Alora, no idea who this is. Again, maybe from a novel. Gotta love number 1 asking, you know her, Captain. Nope. These two are clearly just meeting one another for the first time, Una. Bless her knucklehead heart. Hey, what happened between Alora and Pike? That's between Alora and Pike. And potentially some weird novel, I don't know. I didn't read them all. I do have a collection. With regards to introducing characters that our characters are supposed to have fondness for or history with, I understand that's not the best kind of writing idea. You want to have new characters introduced, yes. But when we're saying that this character has a history with this other character, it's better to see it on screen. Yes, TOS is guilty of it, and so is Strange New Worlds. Oh my, quite a bit of sexual tension going on here. Aloha, Alora. Pike asking if the boy is this man's father seems inappropriate, but allowed. Yeah, I don't know why he just asked it like that. Seems like a clunky way for the scene not to tell us the dynamics of these 3 Magellans, family, co-workers. Maybe we can sex stare at one another after we ascertain why they were being fired upon. The sex stare. Mbenga is reading with his kid again. She miraculously survived the repeated loss of transporter systems across a few episodes. I know, I'm still bitter that these writers couldn't have found some way to get this kid fly fishing with her dad last week. Yes, I'm aware that she can't survive long outside the pattern buffer, but it was such a missed opportunity by the doctor to not transport her to the lake for a few minutes. Just because Mbenga has his daughter transport her on a timer doesn't mean it should be relegated to sickbay. Maybe he's still trying to hide it. Is it me, or does Alora's eye ridges remind anyone of E.T.'s eye sockets? I don't know. I've never seen E.T. What's E.T.? I've seen lots of aliens, but I don't know about E.T. Seems a little ridiculous for the first servant, 2 days from ascending the throne. Wouldn't have better security around him from the Magellans. Starting to think Alora and her people aren't too clever. Perhaps this is why she repeatedly needs rescuing. Singh confirms that the ship, the Enterprise, shot did not indeed crash. Wow, I was hoping maybe they'd just be adrift in space, but no. Uhura done got them good, and Pike just allowed them to plummet to their deaths, despite not wanting to harm them when he ordered her to return fire. Pike didn't even try to save them. Once again, we see that Pike is a bad captain. Singh suggesting that they send a landing party to investigate the ship for survivors. I sure do hope that someone remembers that the Enterprise is equipped with sensors that could scan the planet for life. Probably the same sensors that could have told Pike which life forms were on the two craft when they first arrived. But again, Pike isn't exactly good at his job. I know. Sensors didn't really exist in this episode. They could have figured out exactly what was going on down there. Easy. Without any danger. I know. I said that in the review, I think. Alora looks at Pike straight in the eye and says, I'm coming too, with or without your cooperation. Suddenly starting to get the feeling that Pike has heard her say this before. Aloha, Alora. Also, Alora is literally on the Enterprise and cannot go anywhere without Pike's permission, despite her brave words to the contrary. Lol. Well, Pike's easy to convince. I don't know why. While Nurse Chapel is handily my least favorite character thus far in the show, I have to admit seeing her summon the doctor from his private daddy-daughter time does help explain why she's often the one seen to be running the things in sickbay. Perhaps she's been covering for Mbenga for some time now. Yeah, I know how you're feeling, and how most people are taking Nurse Chapel. This Nurse Chapel is just not our Nurse Chapel. It's just a totally different character. It acts totally different from TOS. I don't understand who this Nurse Chapel is. Like, if you can just divorce this chapel from the old chapel, she's just kind of a comedy relief, paint-by-numbers character who just kind of appears in the background and is there to help with stuff. That's Chapel, so whatever. Daddy Servant Dude is a grumpy jerk explaining that healing begins at the subatomic level for the first servant. If only there was another child in sickbay that needed some subatomic level healing. Oh well. Mbenga says this is a state-of-the-art medical facility. Yeah, with a transporter and an auxiliary bay and everything. Wait. Only Singh and a cadet being down to investigate a whole ship? A cadet that isn't even a security officer? This is ridiculous. I know. The writers just wanted Uhura in the show, and they just came up with any reason they could to have Uhura do all these dangerous things that you'd normally never do. You know, let alone as a cadet. Lesson 3. Let your tricorder do the investigating. Dude, you didn't even scan for life forms from the ship, so back off. Yeah, and also in my review, I did mention that, like, they were walking around in the ship. They were touching the floor. Like, they're already touching stuff. Singh literally has investigated a single hallway of a massive crash site, yet determines the site to be secure. Really? Did the inhabitants of this crash just vanish? Someone or something clearly wiped the database. Alora and Spock were just waiting outside then. Were these knuckleheads not concerned that assailants might have also fled outside? I know. Alora suspects one of the guards has gone turncoat, so they do have guards, and these guards didn't think to, guard the first servant 2 days from his throne ascension. These Magellans are not bright. The Enterprise gets Alora back to her homeworld, lickety-split. I guess those studies the first servant was looking forward to wasn't a priority for his ascension after all. Oh, pretty city. If bland. I've seen this type of city many times. The floating city amongst the clouds. How is it kept up high? They must have very advanced technology. They're futuristic. Spock asks for a private moment with Daddy Servant-Dude, and despite this, doesn't distance himself far enough away to keep the first servant from hearing this conversation. That's a common thing I've noticed in Strange New Worlds. Secret conversations that go on right beside other people. Oh, Spock, you old knucklehead, you. It's a good thing there are only 5 Magellan guards to inspect this. Would take 2 minutes. Yeah, it's a good thing there are only 5 Magellan guards. This would take 2 minutes, okay. Ah, yes, the old, I've been discovered, so I'm going to run then shoot, instead of the old shoot them, run away shtick. Too bad he could have smoked Alora, considering she was standing in front of him. E.T. Knucklehead. Look at these Keystone cops chasing this dude, lol. Keystone Capers. Yeah, I know that one. That was that was a video game. I do like the retro Earth video games. Keystone Capers. That was a good one. Exactly why doesn't this dude shoot the guy in the gold shirt that is running directly towards him? Oof. Was there no better way to choreograph this? Were they losing daylight or something? Ha, Pike. It's not on stun. Would this dude even know what that means? Yeah. That's hilarious. It seems that this alien world also builds the same detached and semi-detached style homes you'd see in Toronto from about 100 years ago, assuming the house in the background is any indication. Maybe that's where they filmed it. I noticed that this futuristic city looks cheaper and worse the closer you look. Alora stabs the dude in the armpit, which for all I know is the groin region, maybe it meant groin, of this alien species. Ew, Uhura eats like a pig. Hey, look, it's old Kirky boy. It's Beef Kirky. Last time we saw him, he was failing security lesson 3. Based on the first 6 episodes of the show, I'd say that the entire crew had their masters in security lesson 6. So did the guard dude die? Is there some reason why we're not questioning him right now? Maybe learn the extent of the coup. Pike insists that he'll put a guard out front of Alora's residence. Sorry, what? A guard? Didn't she just tell you that such an act wouldn't be allowed? Or are we now to believe that Pike is going to give orders to the local guards? Sorry, guard. Yeah, I don't know. The whole security situation on Majalis with regards to Starfleet is so bizarre, and it's so just schizophrenic. Like it's really strange when you think about it. The fact that they allowed someone from Starfleet to see the ascension of the first servant. Alora looks at Pike straight in the eyes and says, "You can come with me instead," suddenly starting to get the feeling that Pike has heard her say this before. Aloha, Alora. A topless Pike reminds me that I'm so far removed from what a human body could look like, lol. This guy's arms are harder than his. Hair. Seriously, look at that helmet. It hasn't moved an inch. I mean the helmet on his shoulders. Get your mind out of the gutter. My mind was not in the gutter. Isn't there a big plot to murder the first servant or something? But sure, let's make time for whoopee and pillow talk about all the fun Pike is going to have when he melts his face in a decade. The Magellan Way includes science, service, and sacrifice. I'm not exactly sure which of these Alora would use to describe the fun time they just had, but I'm confident that there is a Pike maneuver for each of them. Uhura being giddy and wide-eyed again like she was in the first episode. I'm guessing these episodes are filmed or written out of broadcast order. Regardless, Uhura is the most inconsistently written character on this show. At least she addresses Singh as Sir. I honestly wasn't sure how the show would maintain this appropriate paramilitary speech. I dig it. Mbenga discovers the first servant playing alongside his daughter. If only this big old sick bay and some staff to keep an eye on the little bugger. Perhaps a nurse, or better yet, maybe the nurse could have fetched this plate of food. Daddy's servant dude heard some noises. Might be the worst, most laughable excuse for writing a character into a scene that I've ever heard. I actually laughed out loud. Is that what happened? You just heard some noises and that's why you entered the scene? I heard something going on and I just entered the scene. Yeah, that's pretty cheap, I must say. So why exactly is this offshoot of Magellan Society a bad thing? Because Alora never told Pike about it. Who cares? Pike thinks the non-Starfleet transport beam was Kyle transporting the first servant and daddy servant dude. Well, I guess I can't entirely blame him, considering the writers wrote such a ridiculous line and probably forced the VFX team to illustrate a beam that looked like a Starfleet beam. No, I can blame the captain for not knowing the difference. Yeah. It is inconceivable that this vessel would appear out of nowhere before the Enterprise would be alert. I know. I said that in the review. Like, things don't just appear in front of the Enterprise. These writers need a lesson on sensors immediately. Long-range, short-range sensors. Hundreds, thousands of kilometers. You can tell what's going. Perimeter alert. Nothing just shows up unless it's incredibly advanced. Finally, someone on this show realizes the Enterprise has sensors capable of detecting life and the kind of life that is, and the kind of life that it is! Exclamation point. It's a miracle. If only Spock would inform Singh of this revolutionary technology, she might have assessed whether or not life forms were on the crash site earlier. I've lost track of how many times the show has neglected their sensors leading up to this moment. Pike suddenly remembers the ship as a tractor beam, again a technology that has been ignored until now, that could have been used in several instances of Strange New Worlds, including the ship that Uhura shot earlier. The cruiser is the second consecutive vessel that the Enterprise destroys due to poor captaincy and incompetent crew members. Perhaps there is a reason why Mitchell hasn't been seen on the bridge since the first episode, but Pike should have had anyone other than her use phasers to disable the warp engines of the flame. Yeah, what are you going to tell them? We had the cadet on the weapons? Sorry. Pike doesn't immediately reprimand Mitchell for her incompetence or ask for a detailed explanation as to why the tractor beam failed to disengage. Yeah, I know, that's another thing about current Star Trek, is that people, either don't fail, and when they fail, they just get away with it. I appreciate that the director thought having the bridge crew stand at attention look cool, but all I see are a bunch of consoles being left unattended. For all I know, 100 more ships just... Good idea for an episode. Everybody in the bridge is at attention, stands up, and then you can see something going on in the monitor, and sure enough, a bunch of ships just decloaked around them. That might be cute. But also stupid, so don't put it in the show. Pike classifies the loss of the first servant as having symbolic significance. Naturally, this dismissive attitude leaves Allura irate. Yeah, as it would. Yet another instance where we see Pike completely out of touch when it comes to the cultural differences of an alien race. Yes. Pike continues to be a bigot and bad at his job. The explanation for why Daddy's servant dude is a turncoat is absolutely ridiculous. Uhura discovery is circumstantial at best, but bad writing has to wrap up soon, so I'm guessing all that's left for us is to learn that Laura has been hiding something all along. I could smell if she was hiding something the whole episode before the credit roll on this clunker, but oof, this expository dialogue from Singh in front of a suspect no less is painful. Why is Deck 17 so full of junk littering the... I know, I saw that. Shouldn't this stuff be stored in cargo bay, or was that set not completed before the episode was filmed? Yeah, there's cargo pods all over the place on Deck 17. So it's a good thing that the coup organizers didn't, have more than one guard in the surface or two vessels in their fleet. Otherwise, they might use this opportunity to quickly transport the first servant away again, especially when their vessels successfully sneak up on the Enterprise as easily as they do. And there we have it. The old love interest who isn't telling you everything trope. So creative, so original. These writers are knuckleheads. There's 3 or 4 episodes of Strange New Worlds that are so derivative. It's just a different script, just rewritten to be Strange New Worlds at the last second, I'm telling you. Wait, this is the brig? This is the worst design of a brig I've ever seen. You have to literally walk into the same room as the prisoner in order to speak with them. Who thought this was a good idea? Sure hope he doesn't, stab Uma in the throat. Uma? Una. Sorry, I read that wrong. Absolutely, Una. Sit down next to the prisoner. Wonderful. Maybe you two can hug each other next. Well, keep your phaser on your belt, let me tell you. First servant wants Pike to be there for when he ascends. I think I'm starting to get the feeling that the writers of the show have watched Foundation over on Apple TV+. A much better science fiction show, by the way. Can't you just smell the lack of originality coming? Do they not know we humans also watch other television shows, or do they think it's just what they do? Or do they think it's just they that do so? Well, I don't have any other sci-fi. I don't know. What's this? What's Apple TV? What's Foundation? The look on Spock's face is priceless when number 1 asks, "You're saying there's no way to contact the captain exactly when I need to talk to him?" If you look closely, you can almost see Ethan Peck wondering why the writing is so contrived too. Why don't you just fly the ship into the lower atmosphere like you did in episode 1, Knuckleheads? You can almost pinpoint the exact moment Spock's heart breaks in two. Is it me, or does this set look like the same one used in Discovery's season 4 finale? Everything is the same set. They don't got a lot of different sets for this modern Trek. And modern Trek has to take place like year 3000 something, year 2200 something, 2400. Oh my god, we're jumping around everywhere. But we only got the one set, guys. So it looks extra stupid this time. It used to be that a Star Trek show, would largely be set in this time frame within the same 100-year span of time. But with modern Trek, we got a million different Star Trek shows airing at the same time in completely different spaces and eras. And we have to stretch our props and our sets so far now that you can kind of see the breaking point. It wasn't that bad before because things would stay largely in the same time frame, but now we're all over the place. So now it's very obvious when one set is reused a bunch of different times. So yeah, the sets do feel the same. We finally get the big reveal, and shocker, it isn't a shocker. Long live the first servant. Seems a bit cruel though, Alora. Pike tries to stop a ritual he knows nothing about, and thus continues to demonstrate his dismissive aptitude, as his captaincy is rife with equal parts ignorance and arrogance. Yes. I think this is a complicated thing. Like, if this planet was getting into the Federation, that this type of thing wouldn't be allowed. Like, they would have to solve this a different way. But I don't think they're in the Federation, so his actions are his own. And yeah, I think he many times we've seen captains take this stuff into their own hands and right an egregious injustice as we would judge the Majalis planet as being a part of. But it speaks to an earlier era of Star Trek when we would fight against this stuff even though they're not in the Federation. So it's kind of like we're seeing TOS style captaincy, but it feels so out of place with the what we set up so far in this episode. It's weird. It makes Pike look stupid. A guard finally knocks out Pike, and instead of incinerating him on the spot, I say they've earned themselves a second coin. Don't spend it all in one place, you knucklehead. Wow, Pike is straight up a bigot. Instead of understanding the alien culture, at least trying to chastise their whole... Yeah. The thing about this is, yeah, you're right. But also, Alora, if you look at this scene, Alora offloads his insults back onto him and the Federation, which isn't right. That's equally bad, and that looked really bad on Pike. He had nothing to offer to defend the Federation at this moment. She just said some comment based on nothing. It was totally unfounded. That the Federation also is sacrificing kids or something. I don't know. It's so stupid. Go back and watch it. And Pike just has nothing. He has nothing to sell the Federation. He's kind of the captain's kind of like a Federation salesman, right? But in this case, he has nothing. He has nothing to offer at the one point where you would be able to offer, something better. And really, I mean, in reality, there's no reason why the Federation couldn't leave, say, okay, fine, Majalis works this way, fine, and then just say, okay, well, listen, we have this thing, and we can science this up a little bit, and we can make it so you can do this without sacrificing the first servant. If you want to do that, that's fine. And if you can vote on that, that's fine. But having this criticism just fall on Pike, it makes him look, like you said, it makes him look like a bigot instead of understanding it. Have your visceral reaction, But then he should have been like, okay, like, sell the Federation on her a little bit, and then say, here's what we could do. And then, if not, just say, okay, we'll leave and we'll never come back. Is that okay? But they couldn't follow through with, like, how Pike should react to this. That was the problem. He was just, like, love-struck or something. He was confused at a critical moment for diplomacy, and that's not what you want. Pike talks into his communicator. Now number one was, well, she was just like sitting there for hours on end waiting for this exact phrase. Wait for real show. Oh my goodness. He beams like up in like a second, meaning the distortion affecting the atmosphere is already dissipated. Meaning the Enterprise should have been able to reach him for quite some time before this moment. Meaning Pike's unresponsiveness would absolutely resort to a response from the Enterprise. Or is Singh not have a number on her list for rescue captain? Oh my, what a badly written sequence this turned out to be. Not to mention, what if Una was, I don't know, in the bathroom, or sleeping, or signing the hull again? But nope, we get now number one. Brutal. Why is this prisoner walking around the Enterprise freely and without security flanking him? Oh right, because the crew on this ship is incompetent and the writers don't know what they're doing, and we need this scene between him and Mbenga. So yeah, why does he get... I mean, all information we have on this guy, the first servant's father, is that he's not to be trusted. Like, that's not totally correct, but that's the information we have. And yet he's just walking around doing whatever he wants. This episode ends with Pike longingly staring out the Magellan system. 10 years ago, he saved a woman that looked like E.T. Today he falls for and beds this woman. So I'm guessing that 10 years from now, this woman will inform a wounded Pike that their own son has been chosen as the next first servant. But before this, the boy can also use his gifts to cure Pike. Pike is indeed cured and gets to know the son he never knew about. I brought this up in the review. If you watch this episode without knowing about what happens to Pike, you might think he ends up coming back alone. But that's not what happens. It better not be what happens, because that's not what's supposed to happen to Pike. Pike is indeed cured and gets to know the son he never knew he had just long enough to witness his own ascension, leaving the Pike cured physically but forever scared emotionally. You're welcome, bad writers. Don't go with that one. That's a good conclusion without knowing anything that comes afterwards, but don't do that. No spoilers here. For what happens in TOS and beyond. Conclusion: this is not a great episode. Really unoriginal and ultimately disappointing. Plus a plot hole you could fly an Enterprise through. Fly a Constitution class through. And not the old one either, the new one. Nice to see Uhura as something other than an arrogant know-it-all, but then again, Pike fulfilled that role this time around. Man, he is not a good captain. I think Mount is an incredible actor, but mercy if these writers are squandering him as a captain. Yeah, I would say season 2, if that comes around, or when it does, just tone him down a little. Just tone him down by like 30%. The charisma, it's out of place, and make him a little bit more serious. And we got something to work with there. Score a 4 to 10, and there's the rubric for how he rates these scores, I guess. So, thanks a lot, Strathmore. I really appreciated it. Power Cage replied to Michael Strathmore. Wow, I didn't know YT comments could be this long. Michael Strathmore, at Power Cage, you should have seen my Picard rants. That show was so terrible that hammering out 200 points wouldn't be uncommon. Michael Strathmore, at Michael Strathmore from Power Cage. I haven't even bothered with Picard or Discovery. I just don't care anymore. And good people like Lieutenant Mark will let me know if any of it is worth my time. Michael Strathmore at Power Cage. For sure, only so many hours in the day. I know. Orelee Lobue for Star Trek Strange New World Season 1 Episode 3. Peromosm? Does anyone know what that means? Thanks, Orelee Lobue. Power Cage. You've been here for a while. 2 years for Star Trek Picard Season 2, Episode 10 review. Safety not guaranteed. Sneaking into the Strange New Worlds videos. 2 years ago, you were positive and somewhat optimistic about the future of Trek. You've understandably changed since then. This is the kind of comment I hate, where you reveal that everything sucks. Thanks a lot, Power Cage. Now I don't believe in anything anymore. Again, for Picard Season 2 sneaking in, Episode 10, Zed and Back Again, A Hobbit Story, at 3 minutes and 54 seconds. So I'll let you guys check that out at that timestamp if you want to know what that was about. Picard Season 2, we don't need no badges. IT crowd reference at 35:05. I don't know what the IT crowd is. So if it sounded like a reference, great. Again, Power Cage for Picard Season 2, Episode 3. At 9:49. You said the thing. Again, with these responses, you can go to the timestamp yourself and you can see what that was about. So thanks a lot, Power Cage. 27:35 for Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 5. There's your timestamp. Power Cage. There are 8-hour-long YouTube videos, with just background Star Trek ship noises. I've used those to help me fall asleep on more than one occasion. Yeah, I believe that was in that episode where I was talking about Singh mentioning that she likes to just sit around in engineering and listen to everything. I do that too. In real life. Power Cage for Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Episode 5. Bro, your openings are amazing. Please tell me you're working on a video game. I wish. Undertaker 45 for Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 5. I hate to say it, but just like Kenobi, what we got in New Trek is not canon. They are both reboot universes, so there's no canon breaking because they have rewritten what came before. Now the fact that they don't follow their own rules? I guess so. Hello, Michael Strathmore for Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 5. Hello, the following are my real-time reactions as I watch this. Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Spock Amok. There is no other way to say it, so I'll just say it. This is the first terrible episode of the season. Don't misunderstand. If you like it, that's great. But comedy is really, really hard, and frankly, I prefer to make my comedic episodes actually include something funny to chuckle at. Instead, we are treated to dismal writing, ludicrous plot lines, smart characters doing stupid things, and incessant music, masking the fact that these writers and actors have crafted an entirely unfunny situational comedy. So absurd that the idea should have died on the vine back in the writer's room. Letting it wilt on the vine. If you don't believe me, just rewatch the episode and imagine how the lines might land were it not for the music constantly beating over our heads, desperately trying to remind us that this dialogue is meant to be funny. It's cringeworthy stuff, folks. Remember, lame situation with largely unknown characters plus cringeworthy dialogue equals unfunny crap. Can't argue with that equation. As always, these comments are meant to be tongue-in-cheek. But I confess this was difficult to maintain this week. As always, I only watched this episode once. This is the first time I felt that I'll never want to watch this episode again. Read if you like. Don't if you don't. Thanks in advance. Thank you. Spoilers. We open on what I presume is a fever dream from Spock, focusing on his duality issues. Dream or no dream, something seems off from a tonal perspective, and no amount of Caliphie, jingling bells, or throwback Vulcan orchestral scoring is going to change the fact that this is the start of member berries that leave me hungry for originality. For those not in the know, a member berry is when you put something in your show that's a callback to something else, but you do it just as a cheap way to goad people into thinking that this is the real, genuine article. So if I was making a Star Trek show and the writing was crap, I would shove in 5 million TOS references so that people would think it's good. That's called a member berry. Spock wakes up from this nightmare and still we are treated to Dutch angle cinematography. Is this a horror episode? Is Spock still dreaming? Spock's log entry references both the Gorn and the Klingon War. For a show that seems bent on telling fans that this would be a self-contained episodic format, we are getting quite a bit of serialized continuity. I hate that. I'm confused as to why Spock's log entry is cut off. The writers do know that these log entries aren't the same thing as a character's internal thoughts, right? Like, T'Pring's interest doesn't interrupt a previously recorded log entry, guys. Peck needs a dialect coach. Yeah, you said this before, I think. Like yesterday, I've enjoyed his performance in the show as much as I've squirmed at it. He continues to slur his words more than he should, and I firmly believe this. The sooner he tackles this bad habit, the sooner will his Spock shine. Well, I mean, we all want our Spock to shine. You know. Holy balls, this dialogue between Spock and T'Pring is terrible. There is so much expository nonsense crammed into so few sentences that I actually had to rewind it to parse through it all. Keel, Kepler, 22B, Bargent, or Dangerous Criminals. Do these writers seriously expect Joe Public to absorb any of this in real time? Nope. Oof. What is with this music? Can we not go more than a line without music being played? This is typically a device that a show employs anytime dialogue lands with a thud, as in when the lines or the performances aren't strong enough to convey intentions. Musical accompaniment will instead tell audiences what they are supposed to think or feel. I've said on many occasions in my reviews that I'm like a sucker for like cool music. Like, for me, like Star Trek, the experience is like half music. Like, I'm serious. I'm really crazy about it. T'Pring seemingly can't get intimate with her beau, a man who she knows to be enrolled in Starfleet and has Starfleet duties. Yet despite this, she asserts that she is realistic when it comes to her expectations of Spock duties relative to her needs of her relationship. Seems like an oddly illogical thing to assert, even that Spock is a third officer on the flagship and always on call and would likely have insufficient time for this long-distance relationship in the first place. Agreed. Oh no, Captain Pompadour is back. How does the hair team on this show not think this is ridiculous? Nice green tunic, though. I didn't like the tunic. The captain's variant in this, I thought, looked like plastic. How did the Rongovian delegation make it all the way to the bridge without the captain or first officer knowing they were on board a whole day earlier than intended? One commonality amongst every episode of Strange New Worlds is the lackadaisical approach to security, I will say. Vaso and Brax make Rongovians look like Remans once mated with zebras. Yeah. Singh tells Captain Pompadour that she should go and do the security things. You mean like watching for aliens that make their way to the bridge unexpectedly? Yeah, Singh. Yeah, how about that? Nurse Chapel and Ortega seem to catch the doctor behind trying to gather data for a Dr. Baroa. Ortegas asks Chapel if Baroa is this you-know-what. And I had to confess that no, I do not know what this new you-know-what might be. His lover, his dentist, his transporter, insurance salesman. Is there no way this could have been more clear? This conversation between Ortegas and Chapel reveals to us that Chapel has a difficult time with commitment and with communicating. Maybe this is why she was attracted to Spock. Perhaps she relates to him. Ortegas, with a haircut like hers, unironically pokes fun at Mbenga's hat. I know, Ortegas' hair looks like a shoe. This is like, I think this is the first time in Star Trek where I'm actually like distracted by hair. Have you noticed that with Strange New Worlds? Like, just the weird hair ideas are like actually distracting. Like, Pike's hair is distracting. Ortegas' hair is distracting. Singh tells the vacation crew members that the only way to ensure it's done right is to be present when they are checked out. Dude, you couldn't even keep the Rongovians from infiltrating the bridge, so please. Apparently there is a nickname for Una, or was it for Singh? Between the editing, writing, performances, and cinematography, it's not clear. I know. Again, the music is trying to tell us that this scene is meant to be whimsical, but the truth is that it's just a mess. It culminates with Mbenga saying, I don't know what I am saying. And that honestly felt like the actor at this moment. I feel bad for the guy. The scene is so bungled mess. Who directed this? It's not funny, and it's desperately trying to be funny. Mbenga saves it, in my opinion. Mbenga saved that entire thing. Chief Kyle, with acting chops like this, no one is going to mistake him for Marlon Brando anytime soon. Yikes. Lieutenant Dever, you look hot, like fire hot. What about me? Aren't I fire? We're two fires. Forget the hot. Forget the fire hot. How about the fire the writers for writing such terrible dialogue? I know. Now, calling people or things fire, isn't that an old Earth thing? Just saying. Are these people time travelers? This scene in the restaurant is the first time Chapel's hair actually looks like hair and not a terrible wig. Again, what is this? What is with Strange New Worlds and hair? Una whines about how being a senior officer makes her out of touch with the crew. Lady, you're the most senior officer. Literally the first officer. What did you expect? Meanwhile, Singh thinks being out of touch is like Christmas to her? Right. A security breach. Apparently the second such breach in 20 minutes must be the Rongovians again, or perhaps something more sinister. Either way, Una and Singh should definitely keep talking about nonsense in the corridor. Definitely keep talking about nonsense. We cut to an armed Singh and Una walking in on two crew members, and for some ridiculous reason, the blue crew member seems to... blue crew member was a Bolian, I think. Seems to want to state that the two of them are crew members to the two senior officers who would absolutely recognize them as two crew members they are. Jesus, the one on the left even serves on the bridge. Seriously, who wrote this? This isn't funny, this is dumb. Nurse Chapel strikes a senior officer on the head for no reason whatsoever. More hilarious moments in the show, am I right? Oh my god, so funny. Barf. As if the slap wasn't bad enough, Chapel gives some of the worst advice you can give to a Starfleet officer regarding relationships. Remember when... Deep Space Nine spoilers, so... I won't be spoiled, but maybe you will be. Sisko and Yates had to schedule their relationship around their respective duties, true. Even when it was ridiculously difficult to do so, yeah? Me too. Can you even imagine if DS9 dialogue even remotely sound like this teeny bopper crap? This is painful. That's not even fair. That's not even fair to compare DS9 to Strange New Worlds. It's like, forget apples to oranges. You're comparing apples to dried up tube of toothpaste that's been left open for 10 years. Spock tells Chapel that he was raised among Vulcans as if he didn't have a human sister under the same... Yeah, I know. But, hey. I don't mind if we forget Michael. I don't mind. Who had Ichea on their Enterprise bingo card? Spock convinces T'Pring that they need to share souls. I don't know what this means, but apparently mind melding or meditating together isn't sufficient. Don't go losing your brain again now, Spock. Lol. Remember, in TOS, mind melds were like rare and difficult and scary. And they took it very seriously. It wasn't something you just did willy-nilly. Oh my goodness, I was just kidding about Spock losing his brain, but they actually did the next most absurd thing. They've gone all Freaky Friday on us. Are we ever going to see an original idea on the show? Nope. Nope. These writers have written what they think is a hilarious situational comedy for actors that they don't even yet know. Do you know what makes a good comedy? Writing to the strengths of your comedic cast. Do you know what doesn't make a good comedy? Writing comedy for dramatic actors in a dramatic show when you don't even know how best to utilize their chops yet. The latter results are apparent all throughout the episode. These writers conceived of something that made them chuckle, but because that's only half of the equation, the delivery from this cast being asked to do something outside of their wheelhouse ensures that most of the episode falls flat. Part 2 follows. Whoops. Do not reply. Why does this conversation between April and Pompadour sound so contemporary? Well, that's because Kurtzman Trek is written like it takes place today. For you. Not for me. I'm in the future. We talk different. Kurtzman Trek takes place in like the 21st century. It just does. Look at the way everyone's talking. T'Pring is unironically complaining that she and Spock have been spending several hours together. I wonder if anyone who isn't a Star Trek fan would know what a Katra is. Maybe. Like those, the really early like Star Trek films, like 2 and 3, like they're popular, I think, outside of Star Trek fandom. Like there's kind of like an aura around them, so maybe somebody would have some kind of idea. Somebody that's adjacent to Star Trek might know what a Katra is. For those of you who don't know, it's like your soul, kind of. It can leave your body, it can enter another body, it can come back. Just to be very simple about it, without spoiling anything, for those of you who happen to not know, it's a Vulcan thing. Captain Pompadour doubles down on this ridiculous situation and condones T'Pring standing in for Spock rather than trying to ascertain if there's a solution that might return the two of them to their natural bodies. Like, in the first episode, we transported something to the surface of somebody's eye to fool a retinal scanner. Can we not give a microscopic earpiece to, like T'Pring, and then have, like, Spock, like, talking to her ear or something, and so it looks like Spock and sounds like Spock? Like, that's what I would do. T'Pring somehow seems to think that the negotiating with the Rongovians will somehow bring her to better understand Spock. Is there anything less logical than this? Well, all of Discovery is less logical than that. So unfunny and out of the blue was the moment when Singh randomly yelled, "Bad cop," at number 1, that I momentarily wondered if she suffered from Tourette's. That is, until Singh's nostril flares and cartoonish like interrogation confirmed to me that it wasn't so much Tourette's as was terrible acting. Or just being crazy. Just being straight up crazy. Don't underestimate the power of modern writers just being straight up crazy. Enterprise Bingo might actually be more enjoyable in this episode. Oh my, as if this episode wasn't well off the rails already, it now seems that Spock and T'Pring must also be put into a ridiculous situation. I was wrong. Enterprise Bingo is not more enjoyable in this episode. This show seriously depicts the first officer and the chief security pointing phasers at one another. You don't even do that it's not considered a good idea to do that with unloaded weapons in ancient Earth. You know, famous last words being what they are. Don't even aim something you know is unloaded. How reckless can these two Starfleet officers be? Like, I was shocked when I saw this too. Are we seriously meant to accept that the countless crew members do this with regularity on the flagship of Starfleet? This is so moronic, I don't even know what to say. This isn't Lower Decks. This isn't the Cerritos. Does anyone remember when Valeria showed Chekhov that what would happen when an unauthorized phaser was discharged on the Enterprise? Yeah. Like, you don't know what someone's reaction to a stun setting is going to be. Like, you have to, like, we treat stun like it can kill. Okay, you do that so that you're less likely to fire it off willy-nilly, right? Like, how clear we are about saying stun or kill, and, like, how serious we take this shit. Spock goes to meet Chapel and not Dr. Mbenga, or any of the other doctors that must be on the station. Whatever, that dude continues to get shafted in this show. Yeah, I love Mbenga. Really, I think he's one of the better performances and better characters in the show, but they do everything they can to ruin him. Spock says he is trying to save T'Pring's career, just as she is trying to save his, except saving Spock's career is absolutely not what she's trying to do. Yeah, here's what I'm trying to do, except that's not what I'm trying to do. As if Nurse Chapel's advice wasn't terrible enough the first time, now Spock listens to her again for script reasons, I guess. Back with Thelma and Louise now. Thelma states, "I'm not feeling it." Louise concurs. Does anyone know what these two knuckleheads are talking about? No, I don't know. Cut to T'Pring and the Rongovian delegation that Admiral April still thinks that Spock in the room proves that Captain Pompadour hasn't told a superior officer about the real situation going on here. Oh my god, Admiral April doesn't know. That's a court-martial. A court-martial you can be certain won't include some cartoonish Thelma flaring her nostrils at him. Captain Pompadour interrupts the negotiations and says some of the most ludicrous nonsense to T'Pring. Honestly, I can't even tell you what he was trying to achieve in the moment. That's how ludicrous... Yeah. I swear to you that current Star Trek writers just get to a situation in the script and then they just have a big block where it says, insert some melodrama, which I refer to lovingly as discovery writing. Just insert some self-aggrandizing melodrama about time, space, and the future. We just need to get 5 minutes out of this, boys, just to hit the hour mark here. That's all we're doing. Seeing Mbenga fly fishing is the only thing I've enjoyed in this episode thus far. That said, how is it possible that the show wouldn't have written a way for him to spend his time with his daughter by his side? Man, these writers suck. Yeah. Oh boy, this ensuing scene with Chapel, Spock, and Barjan is painful. The writing is terrible. It's somehow worse than a scene between Pompadour and T'Pring. Hey look, Spock and T'Pring have checked in with the Doctor, who apparently has a solution for them. If only these tools thought to do this sooner. The tools are both these two characters as well as the two writers credited for this episode. Yeah. So, I don't want to spoil Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. But how they reverse Katras in this episode does a lot to undermine that movie, which is a great movie. As if to place the cringeworthy chair on top of the cringeworthy sundae, we got Spock and T'Pring screaming at the top of their lungs in pain. Again, this is supposed to be funny? Is this supposed to be Star Trek now? Spock, now cured, wants to thank Chapel for what she did. And I'm seriously at a loss to understand precisely what it is she's done that he should be thankful for. Apparently Mbenga is nowhere to be found and deserves no thanks for, curing them. Spock and T'Pring together again. Is Vulcanness a word, Spock? Look, Captain Pompadour's hunch is reckless, and his vindication is completely unearned. This scene also undermines April's intelligence. I kind of liked it. I kind of like it when we see weird aliens that do stuff different. I mean, this is how won over I am by the presence of cool aliens of the week, is that I'm willing to overlook this. Just to see aliens talking to people. Since I've already bestowed the cringeworthy cherry on top of this cringeworthy sundae, I'll simply say that this spacewalk across the Enterprise hull is a cringeworthy whipped cream to finish off the head of the cringeworthy sundae. I'm almost stunned that they didn't show Captain Pompadour's name scribbled onto the hull, especially since he's the most careless captain we've seen in Starfleet. Did they have magnetic boots on for that scene? I don't remember. I hope they did. You need mag boots in order to walk around the Enterprise like that, which come generally on an EV suit, which they weren't wearing. They were using a dynamic shield bubble, which it just like it I'm at a loss when trying to explain that, the stupidity of that. But there you go. It's like something straight out of the animated series. The episode finally ends with Ortegas, and that's an insult to the animated series, by the way. So, the episode finally ends with Ortegas and Chapel talking to each other about Chapel's boring relationship and commitment problems. Ortegas now stands alone as the only character without any known trauma, which essentially makes her infinitely more interesting to me than the rest of the cast, with the possible exception of Mbenga. I know. I'm just over the whole trauma thing. Like, you could argue that at the beginning of TNG, they had characters that had some kind of like background trauma, but that was in 1987, okay? And we didn't have to survive 4 seasons of Discovery and 2 seasons of Picard where it was nothing but trauma and pain and agony. And we were finally going back to TOS, which was a season, multiple seasons, a series, if you will, that really didn't focus on anything like that. If you go back and watch TOS, you don't know that much about the characters. It's a great way to have it, really, because you're focusing on what they do. You know, what you do is more important than who you were, because who you were is dead. The only you is you that exists now. Remember that. Conclusion. Wow, this one was difficult to have fun with. Suffice it to say, it's absolutely terrible. I think there is plenty of room for humor in Star Trek. The relationship between Quark and Odo proves this time and time again. But this episode is a train wreck, an unfunny off the rails train wreck. Odo. Score 3 out of 10. Unwatchable, disaster, terrible. So this one was a terrible, if you look at the marking rubric here. Thank you, Michael Strathmore, for the long review in the comments. Undertaker 45 for Star Trek Strange New World Season 1 Episode 5. So you're telling me instead of thought-provoking deep theoretical discussion at the end of Star Trek, we get WTF did I just watch at the end of this? Shite. Dude, I love the old Star Trek endings where they walk through the hall and they're just like talking about like what happened today and like what it all means, and then they just go back to sit on the bridge. Glad that's over. Do 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 do. Ba, 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 ba. I wouldn't care if every episode ended that way. Bioshock 69. I have to agree with you on the retconning the classic Star Trek shows. However, I don't have all the knowledge of the ins and outs of the shows. I have some, but not on your level of understanding. Why I can't why I can let a lot of this retconning slide as it goes over my head, but just as they all had to do, it retweaking the writing, like you said, to still keep it canon. But I think they know they're retconning it because they want to put their own stamp on it and start with a fresh take, ignoring all the classic Trek films, which yes, it's wrong, but for me, maybe it's a start to move on and just go with it and just try to enjoy it for what it is, as a fresh new timeline Star Trek show. But I know many can and won't, but for me I can. That's great. I hope that, see, like, I always review these things from the position of your average viewer. I really try to, which is why Strange New Worlds tends to score in the middle for me, right? The reason why you want to do that is because many people were introduced to Star Trek through non-canon things. It's very important. You see, you watch something that is considered not canon, you love it, and you say, is there any more of this? If I love this, how much will I love the old stuff? And then you watch it, and it turns out you loved it more. Many cases of that, you know. So if you watch this, and yeah, I'd say it's not canon, and it's playing fast and loose with the logic of Star Trek, and they get an entertaining episode out of it, and I rate it like a 6, and somebody who doesn't know about Star Trek watches it, and they say, hey, this was pretty cool. What's all this Star Trek stuff about? And then they go and they dig up the old stuff. Well, I consider that a win, right? Who amongst us would consider that a failure? Not me. So thanks a lot, Bioshock 69. IAmNotANugget BlackHart, again, for Strange New World Season 1, Episode 5. It's interesting that you always like to rate these as an average rating, but your criticism is very detailed. It kind of confuses me because I think that you're hating it, but you really don't. You just have a lot of criticisms that don't necessarily conflate to hatred or likability. Also, I love your ship design and your intro and the whole thing with the ship you have. Thank you. IAmNotANugget BlackHart. That's exactly what I was saying in response to the previous comment. I don't really hate. I don't hate something until it's like 3.5 or less. That's when it starts to like, it gets to the point where this is like damaging to like Star Trek. Because when we go back and watch old Star Trek, it's easy to have an inflated review score for the whole thing in general, because we weren't necessarily at the time watching it all the way through. Like when I go back and I watch TOS, I know what episodes to skip. So that gives you an artificially inflated view of the show, right? Like, so, I mean, if you're watching TOS and you see this episode, that wasn't very good. This next one comes up, that wasn't very good. And the next one comes up and it's amazing. Years from now, you're going to skip those bad ones and you're going to think TOS is this amazing show. It is. But you get my point, right? Like, you have to really look at this for what it really is. And what it really is just kind of middling. But the criticisms should still be detailed. I should still put forward exactly what the problems are, okay? For Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 1, Big Stick Diplomacy, the movie Pike was watching in the first episode is The Day the Earth Stood Still. That was directed by Robert Wise, who also directed Star Trek The Motion Picture, so it's more meta than you thought. The message of the film is mirrored in this episode of Strange New Worlds. And I said fascinating, because it is fascinating. Thank you, Michael Papp. Briscoerob, or briscoerob, for Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 4. Why am I hearing Star Trek Discovery theme music in the Star Wars Obi-Wan trailer? And I said the music in Discovery is actually very bland and is actually very bland and formulaic. It's not surprising that it shows up all over the place, to varying degrees of similarity. Thank you, Jeff Russo. Great themes you come up with. Again, briscoerob for Star Trek Picard Season 2. Again, Picard won't leave me alone. It won't leave me alone. God, it's like a bad rash. I would like to see artificial intelligence occupying the universe and all its resources and how humanity will cope with this kind of disaster. Yeah, maybe there's a different sci-fi show hidden in that concept somewhere. I don't know. Thank you, briscoerob. Matt Chesterton for Star Trek Strange New World, Season 1, Episode 4. The moment when Uhura basically repeated back to Hemmer word for word the textbook definition of the AP350, I immediately thought eidetic memory. It might make sense for her character in this series, considering they've had her boast a knowledge of over 30 languages. Makes me wonder if there will be another instance like that from her in the future episodes. Maybe. Eidetic memory is kind of like photographic memory, but it also means like everything that you're exposed to, not just like, like images or like text. Like it's a more all-encompassing photographic memory. I know the Uhura I know isn't really like that, but thanks, Matt Chesterton. Bioshock 69, Star Trek Strange New World, Season 1, Episode 4. The Gorn will be back, as we have seen a baby Gorn in the trailers, if that was a Gorn. My opinion is they're doing this Gorn again like a Borg episode, a Part 2 episode maybe for the end of the Season 1, yeah. Gorn did end up coming back. Gorn, spoilers, killed Hemmer. I'll never forgive them. I will never forgive the Gorn for doing that to Hemmer, what they did to my boy. Look how they massacred my boy. Thank you, Bioshock 69. Kevin Acklin for Strange New World, Season 1, Episode 3. They were always going to stick to the formula of Picard and Discovery. What they did was compromise it by making the stories episodic, but the character drama is serialized. That will please some of the fan base, but the feeling stuff is still in this. I know. I would much rather the whole entire story and characters thing be episodic, where it resets each episode and you can see how these episodes out of order. Each show has a beginning, middle, and end and complete. See, that's hard. Did you know that it's actually harder writing episodic shows that wrap up correctly in one episode and you can view them out of order? It's easy. Anybody can make a 10-hour long movie and then just randomly cut it into 10 different episodes that have no good beginning, middle, or end, and you come out feeling like you've just been slapped over the head with a frozen fish. But writing concise, smart episodes that begin and end and wrap themselves up, that takes talent. Thanks a lot, Kevin Acklin. Bioshock 69, again, for Strange New World, Season 1, Episode 2. As we're not touching the comet, I took it as the Enterprise isn't touching it, and the comet, was, as Pike was referring to, was the crew on the Enterprise. Spock wasn't on the Enterprise, he was touching it on the shuttle and not the Enterprise, why he said, we're not touching the comet. Yeah, in that episode there was some confusion around, like, you're not allowed to touch this comet, this is a sacred thing for the Shepherds, I think they were called. And then I mentioned that Spock's shuttle bumped into the comet, and then you're saying that maybe, like, they meant it like the Enterprise is not allowed to touch the comet, but I would argue that maybe you're not going to get off on a technicality like that with hostile aliens too often. But Bioshock 69, thanks for watching the review and coming up with that comment. Again, Bioshock 69 for Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 1. I agree with the music in the intro, how I feel about it. I like the beginning and the famous notes at the end, but totally ruined in the middle with crap. Hope they issue this in the second season. It needs to be changed. Considering how well the show looks, for me, it's the best Star Trek show since TOS and TNG, and I like this over the 2013 films. I won't say anything think about Discovery as it wasn't Star Trek. Wow, we're not even going to consider Discovery Star Trek because it's just not Star Trek. Thanks, Bioshock 69. Undertaker 45 for Star Trek Strange New World, Season 1, Episode 3. As soon as I hear first officer's log, it immediately takes me out of the episode. How many times in all of actual Trek did that happen? Not because the captain was incapacitated in some way and the first officer had to take over, but because the captain, first officer, and science officer was on a landing party, absolutely Starfleet protocols, and we need to bypass Pike yet again. I'm thinking this is another bait and switch where the women are more important than the captain. Also, there are so many rip-offs from actual Trek, it's ridiculous. Like Mbenga's, once again, thank God for Chapel. Kid, can you say Daedalus from Enterprise? Pitiful. Writer's getting an original thought. Yeah, I did bring that up. How this kind of mirrors Daedalus, the episode Daedalus from Star Trek Enterprise. Spoilers. It involves the inventor of the transporter trying to find his son, who was lost in a transporter accident, right? By transporting, trying to transport him backwards into the transporter, like from the ether around him, and they go to like this area of space where this is like easier to do, and it's complicated, but it does mirror this in some way. The idea of having your kid trapped in a transporter in some way. Not to mention relics from TNG. Just have your daughter on Earth. I'm sure the transporters... If you gotta keep her in a transporter, just keep her on Earth. You don't want to have her on a starship where one thing goes wrong and she's dead. Undertaker 45 for Star Trek Strange New World Season 1 Episode 2. Also, I'm kind of pissed. Pike's cabin is bigger than 10 forward. He has like 10 people at a huge table, full functional kitchen, no replicators, and a effing fireplace. Captain Cabin in a Galaxy-class ship was a joke compared to this. When they finally get to totally destroying TNG, the Captain Cabin will be as big as an arena. Yeah, dude. By the time, if we reboot TOS and then reboot TNG in this timeline, by the time we get to the Galaxy-class, the captain's quarters are going to be as big as an arboretum. There's going to be the shuttle bay on the saucer section of the Galaxy class is going to be, the entirety of it is going to be the captain's quarters. And by Nemesis, like the Sovereign class is going to roll out where the entire ship is the captain's quarters. This entire ship is my quarters. The world is my litter box. I mean my quarters. Thank you, Undertaker 45. You were totally right on that. Undertaker 45 for Strange New World Season 1 Episode 2. I found it fascinating that we would have passed as Trek 15 years ago is now passing barely. In other words, Trek is so bad now that Strange New Worlds is seen as not bad or okay. Funny, was Enterprise given this much latitude? No. People hated Enterprise when that came out. And now we're looking back at it like it's gold. Like, it's so funny how that happens, right? You always look back at the thing you hated, realizing how much better it is than what you got now. Like, people love Berman now. I remember when people hated Rick Berman. Like, the Berman shows, like, Enterprise and Voyager were very Berman-y. Like, Enterprise got better as it went on, but Voyager was just kind of a straggler for the entirety of the show. No offense to Voyager. It's a great show. But it's absolutely amazing now compared to modern Trek. So, yeah, thanks, Undertaker 45. We just don't have the writers we're used to. I'll say that much. Joe Cronin Show for Star Trek Strange New World Season 1 Episode 2. I'm assuming it's just a line and saying before breakfast, and maybe it's night shift, I don't know. Yeah, they did mention that they were going to breakfast or something in Strange New Worlds, and they had this done before breakfast. And it was like, I took it literally, but you're kind of putting in my head that maybe it was just a joke. Maybe I took this too seriously. Haha, we're going to get this done before breakfast. I guess now, with my understanding of how Pike talks, I should just consider that like just a joke or just not true. So yeah, thanks a lot, Joe Cronin Show, for your comment. Who cares? Now there's a name. Okay. Who cares, really? For Star Trek Strange New World Season 1 Episode 1 review. For the timestamp 2328, or maybe one of the ships that crashed to the planet, the propulsion system destroyed, but the core mostly intact. I wish. I really hate about this episode 1, how apparently primitive planets can now reverse engineer warp technology from seeing it through like a telescope, essentially. Again, for Strange New World Season 1, Episode 1 from Who Really Cares, or Who Cares Really, 2248, timestamp. Number 1 said less than a light year away in the elevator, but the rest of it you are right. Although I do not have it verified, but I hear this is supposed to take place 3 months after the battle. Yeah, I accidentally thought it was like 100 light years or something. But I guess from what you're saying, it was less than a light year, so I'm sorry for that factual error. Still, my complaint is, I think it's justified. It's far-fetched that you can reverse engineer warp technology from just seeing it. I don't know. Like, that's... Think of the planets we contaminated. I don't want to think about that. I want to have a good time. I'm here for a good time. Not a long time, so have a good time. Who cares, really? I enjoyed it for the most part, but I do have my issues. First, they tried hard to make Pike a pseudo-Kirk. Agreed. The entire beginning was very much like Kirk and the Nexus from Generations. Second, the Admiral shouldn't press someone who should be under psychiatric care back into command because it is too risky. What if he freezes up at an important time? That is why compromised officers can be relieved by a CMO, Chief Medical Officer. Third, the Vulcans are too emotional. I'm looking past that they are too reddish, and the giant glass room on a very hot planet. 4. How did Spock make it back to Earth from Vulcan that quick? The Surrock-type warp shuttle? Just joking. That's not what they did. 5. The beaming from the shuttle was a big dislike. If he can't handle the conversation, he shouldn't be in command. 6. The Enterprise has an AI after the stuff in Disco Season 2. 7. The Archer has a 3-person crew for a first contact mission. Either that ship is too big or the crew too small, even if it is supposed to be classified. That ship looked big to me. I looked at the image of it and just its construction. I have a good eye for this. It looked too big. Their telescopes not only allowed them to see, but analyze and break down to make antimatter. And how would that info arrive at a planet a light year away in less than a year? It shouldn't, right? But that whole plot point is terrible. The advanced genetic manipulation and not having to go to the ship stores to find appropriate clothing. There are no replicators at this time. I know. Everyone forgets this. There is no... You do not replicate things in TOS. Okay, you don't go to the replicator and get food. No, you go to a thing called a protein resequencer, right? That creates food. That it creates the raw materials of food that are then cooked as in a recipe, right? And then brought into the galley or mess hall. And you put in your data card. It's like a card with like your ID and your like, it's kind of like a meal card that is like, has info on it that tells the computer or the person on the other side what should appear through the door. You put that in and then take it out and the door opens and it either transports food in or somebody puts it there. It's not a replicator. It's not the same thing. I don't know why these writers always forget about replicators. It's such a good tool to get out of jail free. It's a get out of jail free card. That's what a replicator is. We have them in TNG, but in order to make these new TOS style shows work, we need to go back in time and put them back there so we can get out of horrible plot situations. Big problem. The mistake is common. 11. Spock shouldn't have been able to go on the mission. The fact that his transformation was going to be short introduced unnecessary risk, as is shown. Yeah, I don't know why Spock went. Pike didn't immediately transform. Spock didn't immediately transform, but the first officer did. 13. The security chief shouldn't suggest introducing a security risk into the mission unless she planned on not returning the people, and how is so much known about their genetics without having a sample at the very least? The abducted people should have been restrained. I know. I have no idea how one of those abducted people managed to get out of medbay and, like, run that far into the ship. It's shocking. 14. They rushed in and almost created a worse situation the second they thought Spock's treatment would wear off. They should have pulled him. 15. Why would a species at war not be guarding the aliens, questioning them, and trying to find out more about them? 16. Spock's yell. 17. There are better things to have shown the Council. The Bell Riots, Eugenics War, I know. What they show was targeted at Americans and not an allegory like Star Trek. Yeah, maybe you could have shown footage actually taken from Deep Space Nine of the Bell Riots. That might be an interesting callback, and it would get a lot of people on board with the show. Win over favor with people that you lost from Discovery. Yeah. And I thought I saw Earth flags in the background of this episode when they were showing what was supposed to be riots of an alien planet. That was kind of weird. 18. One speech, and they get rid of a century of hate and fighting and distrust. They are better than we are. It took a lot more than a speech on Earth to get anything done. I don't know what's going on with these aliens, but one speech from Pike completely changed the course of their planet. This is a testament to why you need the Prawn Directive. Because apparently, one alien showing up and saying one thing can artificially alter the destiny of an entire world. So, just putting that out there. 19. If not imprisoned, he should have at least been stripped of his command loophole. Or not. Pike is not fit for command. Well, by the end of the show, I would agree with you. So thanks a lot. Who cares really? Who cares really? Again, for Strange New World, Season 1, Episode 1. And the very beginning, was that the theme from the Sega Genesis Star Trek Next Generation Echoes of the Past? Yes. I love that game. Almost beat it. Beat it, was outside the final room, and Mom made me take out the trash. During that chore, the Sega broke and never worked again. Still upset almost 2 decades later. Thanks, who cares really? And this one is for the last comment review video. Why does every version of Brent Spiner sung always evil? How the hell did he create Data and not all lores? Lol, Brent. Power Cage. Lol, Brent Spider. I like it. So do I. Thanks, Power Cage, and thanks, Undertaker 45. Undertaker 45 for Strange New World Season 1, Episode 1. So this is not for Kurtzman Trek writers because it takes thinking. So Khan left Earth in around 1996 to 97. He was asleep for 230 years, give or take. Then is on Ceti Alpha 5 for 5 years, give or take. Or was it Ceti Alpha 4? Then he and his whole crew, including, in my opinion, his son, dies in the Genesis Project. How in the actual could he have an offspring in 2240? Spock served 11 and a half years at Pike. Her was a cadet and only made lieutenant in 12 or 13 years. How long did it take Her was a cadet and only made lieutenant in 12 or 13 years. How long did it take you, Mark? It took me about 6 years to get to the point where I'm at now, and it took her like almost twice that. So you have to have Mabinga or Mbenga, but Nurse Chapel, who also didn't serve on this Enterprise, shows up and the main character in the sickbay, and the chief medical officer has nothing to do because she's the best ever. Geologist, super nurse, but not a doctor yet? Point taken. And modern Trek, try not to think too hard about time and how that works because it tends to break down. I don't know how we can get away with having Singh on the Enterprise. And then by the time TOS rolls around, Spock doesn't say, "Oh, small world. Was that your great-great-granddaughter or something? La'an, Nooney, and Singh? You know, in the episode Space Seed?" How about just not having the character of Singh in the show? You know, just a lot of these problems in modern Trek are problems that they invented for themselves. We showed Una, Pike, and Spock in Discovery. Audiences liked them. Why take the chance and just invent a million new things? You mean, long gone are the great writers of the past, right? Like, maybe now's not the time to take chances anymore. That's the saddest thing I've ever said on this channel. Maybe now's not the time to take chances, but it certainly seems apt when your writers are so terrible, you know? Power Cage for Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 1, Episode 1. Wasn't Captain Pike retired by death? Or at least by becoming quadriplegic? Yeah, essentially. He retires by... Spoilers. He's involved in an accident during Starfleet training where he's exposed to a type of radiation that renders him basically wheelchair bound. Okay? And then later on in the Menagerie episode of TOS, we see how his character develops beyond that point. No spoilers. But yeah, Pike is essentially retired by death or being quadriplegic. So thank you, Power Cage. Power Cage again for Star Trek Strange New Worlds Episode 1, Season 1. Thank you for watching New Trek for me. Alright. And that's it. That about wraps it up. But I did get one new comment recently. Somebody went back again to Picard Season 2. I think I'm going to need some cream after I read this comment. Because it just brings up Picard again. Not to disparage the comment. Okay. You really need to stop being so exoteric in your understanding of these shows. It's always the same theme, the same players, the same story. I don't understand how nobody can see. In the other show, the Savior Michael, meaning he who is what God is a red angel who falls from heaven. Remembering that only Freemasons can have any influence in the entertainment industry, then, who are the Borg really? What is the Federation? What is Q, Guinan, etc.? Fascinating comment. Coming from a world outside of what I normally see in my comment section. So I would definitely invite response to this comment from anybody watching this video that can maybe help shed some light on this. I'm viewing these things in an exoteric way. What that means is I'm viewing things at face value. I'm not here to go into an incredibly deep dive video essay about Star Trek. I'm here to just say what I'm thinking at the moment with each episode as it goes by. Exoteric meaning, like an apple is fresh, tastes good, and I eat it for nutrition. An esoteric view of an apple might be that an apple represents gravity, because of good old Sir Isaac Newton. When he invented gravity, damn him, things were so much easier before he invented gravity. Things just floated. He made my life hell. You should see the things I gotta do to deal with gravity. But, you see my point? He's, ALoonwolf, he's trying to put forward this idea that I'm viewing this purely exoterically, mechanically, in terms of its utility. Maybe I should talk about the symbolism of the show, who these characters represent. What does Michael mean with the name? Names do have meanings. He who is what God is. The Red Angel. Who was Q? Who was the Federation? Who are the Borg really? I would appreciate if you would bring that forward in the future with comments on subsequent episodes that I review. I don't know much about symbolism, much about far-flung Earth historical things, but you seem to. So I thank you a lot for your input. With regards to remembering that that only Freemasons can have influence in the entertainment industry, I don't know anything about that, really. I know what I see, and usually what I see isn't that good. So if Freemasons really are in control of the entertainment industry, they're not doing a great job. I'll leave it up to you guys to imagine who Q, Federation, Guinan, who they really are. But thanks a lot, ALoonwolf, for the, may I say, esoteric comment. And that about wraps it up for my current batch of comments to look at. This is part 2. You can go back and watch part 1 if you want to. Lots of long comments. Thanks a lot to all you people who have been around for a long time. I know who you are. And I'll see you guys when next I see you. It looks like Lower Deck Season 3 is next up on the schedule, sometime in August 25th, I think. But we're going to have some stuff between now and then, believe me. See you guys later.